We are joined now by the woman who should have won every Pulitzer Prize for the last decade or so, Miranda Devine. Just fantastic work at the New York Post. And Miranda, we wanted to have you on because there is an attempt now, and we should have maybe seen this coming. I'm curious if you saw it coming. As we move closer, we're about 8 months out from Election Day. They're trying to run Russia collusion. I don't even know if you call it 3.0, 4.0. They're trying to argue that Russia is trying to put Donald Trump in the White House again, and they're trying to call into question the Hunter Biden laptop again. Are you astounded that they would have the gall to attempt this again? For people out there who may not be paying attention to this game plan right now, what in the world's going on?
Yeah, look, I should be astounded because it's just so preposterous, but the lies and the dishonesty that we've seen from the Democrats, from the FBI, from the DOJ, and from a lot of the media just means that I'm actually not surprised by anything anymore. You know, I think as cynical as you are, you can just be more cynical from what we've seen pretty much since Donald Trump arrived on the scene. So I think they're desperate, the people trying to prop up Joe Biden. He's such a terrible candidate. And the corruption allegations that are coming out of the impeachment inquiry are so lethal that they're clutching at straws. And they've seen this Smirnov indictment of this confidential human source, this FBI informant, as kind of manna from heaven for them. So they've just grabbed it with both hands and run with it and jumped the shark big time, because I just think even, you know, to their sheep that read the New York Times and the Washington Post and the MSNBC viewers, it's just implausible. It really is. You have to be brain dead to believe that it has anything to do with Hunter Biden's laptop, which has been proven over and over again as being legitimate, was authenticated by the FBI when they had it in December 2019, et cetera. So it's ridiculous. But as you say, I mean, there are brain-dead people out there voting.
You know, Miranda, I come from a world where, well, you're a journalist, so same thing on sourcing, right? But protecting sources and methods and keeping lines of communication open for future sources, very important. I can't even think of a time. I mean, Christopher Steele's dossier, the entire thing was a lie, right? None of the Steele dossier was, and in fact, much of it was corroborated as false, right, or proven to be untrue. And there was never even a notion that he would be prosecuted for lying to the FBI. Like, this just didn't even come up, didn't even happen. And yet now they're going to prosecute a guy. Why? Because if you're the FBI going forward, you got to assume that if somebody's going to bring you information, they're going to remember, if I get on the wrong side of the politics here, they may decide to lock me up.
Well, look, it's even worse than that, because they have in court, in open court, gratuitously blown Smirnov's cover. This is a guy that worked for 13 years for the FBI. He was born in Ukraine. He spoke Russian. He was an Israeli-American dual national, has lived here more than half his life, or about half his life. He's 43 years old. He was paid six figures, I'm told hundreds of thousands of dollars over that period by the FBI. The information that he was bringing back to his FBI handler was very important. It was used in at least 20 trials and convictions of criminals. He testified in those. His contacts with high-level Russian spies, Russian intelligence officials, were what the FBI was paying him for. They were sending him out into very dangerous situations and getting him to gather information, gather passport copies and so on of these Russian officials to try and recruit Russians as spies. And he was coming back and reporting this to his handler, and his handler was memorializing that in these FD 1023 forms. They were used in trials, in criminal trials, as I said. So this is a guy that has been sent out to do these things, and suddenly his contacts with Russian officials that were why he was being paid by the FBI are being used against him in court to try and prove by David Weiss's prosecutors that he is a danger to national security, that he's peddling Russian disinformation, and he's going to be trying to impact the 2024 election, interfere with the 2024 election. So they have basically thrown this former trusted confidential human source to the wolves. They have exposed his identity, put a target on his back, and even the magistrate judge in Nevada who actually granted him bail was skeptical about some of the information and also said, you've just given me a quarter of your motion is irrelevant to the question at hand, which is whether or not we give him bail, and sort of questioned why they had to go into this gratuitous detail about which Russian official he met here and, that he was on a yacht with a Russian assassin. And it was extremely detailed, and there was no reason to do it other than to permanently incapacitate Smirnov as a spy or an informant. And the other interesting wrinkle in this is that just reading the indictment, it seems to me that he was also may have been working for Israeli intelligence. He certainly was working for the Israeli government in 2002 when he was in his early 20s. And there's a suggestion, or not suggestion, there's a reference to the fact that he was recruited a couple of people, including a Russian official at a consulate in Israel, on behalf of the Israeli government, and that he kept that Russian source that he got when he was working for the Israeli government for at least 20 years and was reporting back on his contacts with him to his FBI handler. So he may have also been an Israeli spy, which makes this all the more curious and sort of mixes it up perhaps with Joe Biden's hostility to Benjamin Netanyahu.
Miranda, I'm not sure if you guys have even decided, but you're in New York. Assuming this trial happens with Alvin Bragg, March 25th, they start to select the jury. Do you anticipate going daily and sitting and watching this? What do you think the circus is going to be like in New York City if Trump is going on trial and they start to pick that jury on March 25th?
I mean, it's just like all the other trials, isn't it? Of course it's going to be a circus. And, we've had already so this is Stormy Daniels. We've had the case in New York with Judge Engeron that fined him a huge amount of money for, some completely, fault-free loans that he got. And then we also had that silly other case where he was fined a huge amount of money by that woman whose name escapes me.
E. Jean Carroll.
Yeah, E. Jean Carroll. It's just circus number 3, I guess. And we will see the usual thing, which is that the sort of left-wing media will portray it as Donald Trump's just an evil monster and should not ever be near the White House again. And Donald Trump will try and spin it into a positive for him where he gets free media and he can make statements and this is part of his campaign. I actually don't think that is going to be positive for him as the campaign proper gets underway. Probably worked for him to distract from his primary opponents previously, but I think when it comes down to it's just him against Joe Biden, I think it will be negative for him that he is constantly portrayed as, being under siege in a courtroom, because people sort of automatically assume, who aren't as cynical as we are, that you must have done something wrong if you're being prosecuted, especially if you're being prosecuted all sorts of places and in all sorts of ways.
Miranda Devine, everybody, get Laptop from Hell. And very important reading going into this election cycle once again. And also look for her latest columns at NewYorkPost.com. Miranda, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, guys.